All right, fact check this podcast. And today, since I am not a lawyer, I asked a couple lawyers on to review the most recent Supreme Court nominee, Ketanji Brown Jackson. And we are going to talk about some of her qualifications and then I'd also kind of like to look at some of the other Supreme Court nominees who have come about over the last several years. There's, for whatever reason, I don't know. Do any of y'all remember being younger?
No.
All of the that's because you're too old, Tyler.
Right.
Being younger and like this much hype being put around Supreme Court nominees the way it has over the last 5 years or so, like it just seems insane.
Before Sotomayor, I can't remember anybody else getting on.
I'm old enough to remember Robert Bork in '87. Clarence Thomas was a big deal. 50.
Oh my God, you look like a baby.
Oh, that's kind of you. And we can talk about that later. So I do remember some of those things. And I think Bork specifically, where he came out and talked about originalism and there was all these other, that's why you see so many judges or, potential SCOTUS confirmed judges acting the way they do about not wanting to answer questions, and really no one until Gorsuch recently talking about his kind of philosophy of, originalism in a sense.
So what I really kind of wanted to look at with Ketanji Brown Jackson is her. So it hasn't gotten talked about at all with Amy Coney Barrett, or especially not with Kavanaugh, and not really so much with Gorsuch either. They didn't attack them for their actual judgments. They didn't attack them for their records. They went after them for incredibly personal, non-related BS. And so what you've actually seen in some of these questionings and stuff with Ketanji Brown Jackson is you've seen the Republicans who are grilling her actually going after her record and the way that she has ruled on specific things. So what is y'all's take on some of her rulings? What's y'all's take on kind of her record as it stands? And then also just kind of looking at the way the right attacks a candidate versus the way the left has attacked a candidate over the last 5 years or so.
I'll let Meredith go.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'll go. This happens in court all the time, by the way. This little do you want to go? I'll go. So I am disappointed that it has not gone on for the past few nominees as much. I think Brett Kavanaugh, for example, had a very terrible record on the Fourth Amendment, and we barely got into that. Did they touch on it? I don't think so. I kind of stayed off of media and social media that whole week that was going on because it was driving me crazy for several reasons. But yeah, I think that there was a lot of reasons to dislike Kavanaugh as a judge that had nothing to do with the allegations against him. Ketanji Brown, I think, from what I've read on her, and I will admit to not being as necessarily learned about her as I would like to be to speak on this incredibly intelligently. But I think that the biggest thing that people like to ask about or raise with her is the child porn sentencing recommendations. I do think that's interesting. I also think there's things I like about her too that sort of go in line with that. And I want to make sure no one thinks I'm a pedophile apologist. Yes, anybody who hurts a child should die a horrible death. I do think her background as a public defender, I think, is incredibly important. And I think her history on the Sentencing Commission, I believe, I can't remember the official name for it, is helpful because as liberty people, I think that we all can come together on the idea that a lot of sentencing, especially mandatory minimums, are ridiculous. Child porn thing, not great. Although I can see what she was saying in the sense of possession of images and the sentencing guidelines for child porn cases are extreme, and there's a reason. It's a deterrent. And the counts go by the actual amount of files you have. I can see why she would be, somewhat think that that's somewhat extreme for someone who's merely possessing the items. Again, you could argue that it's a deterrent, and taking away the market for such things is a way to deter the crime from happening. I don't know that that's a great argument. I think child porn will always exist, and I would love to see people actually going after the peddlers and traffickers more. But if they did that, they'd be going after themselves. So, that's what that is. And I don't know. What do you think, Tyler?
Yeah, actually, you nailed a few of the things. One, Kavanaugh. If he had been shot into space and not confirmed, I would have been fine with it for the reasons you're exactly stating. And then we've seen some of those rulings that he's been really poor on. And I tend to judge recent judges now by Gorsuch. He's actually been one of my favorites. So
Definitely.
You're completely right. But I did not like the way the confirmation hearing went with Kavanaugh. So, what you said about the sentencing stuff, I don't know. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about what Justin asked of how the GOP is taking this. Watching some of the questions, they're grandstanding a little bit about they keep mentioning how they are not doing the Kavanaugh thing. And I'm like, just get over it. Just do what you're going to do. Stop telling everybody how great you are. You're so proud of your humility in a sense. And it's just kind of weird. With that said, they're going after the sentencing, and some of her actual takes on the law is a much better idea, and I appreciate that. But in the end, it doesn't matter. They put up a black female. I mean, we can talk about that part too, which is almost going to inoculate anything that the right can do. They can't go after much of this. They can't do like they did with Clarence Thomas and talk about, a pubic hair in a Coke can, things like this, because yes, I don't know if you remember that. That was the whole deal.
I do. I remember. I heard about it.
Yeah. So once again, they can't. The right can't do that. They're just always backpedaling. And so for a black woman, you can't do that. But what's really interesting is talk about the diversity here. She went to Harvard. I think the majority of the judges are all from Harvard. I think there's 3 that are from Yale. There's really no diversity. I mean, you can say she's black, this one's whatever, but they're all really similar as far as their elitist abilities of everything. You don't have a common, person. Now, you said she was a public defender. I'm not a big fan of any of that, but I think that does taint, and to see the right trying to push some of this. I'm not a fan of some of their the sentencing things, like you said. I'm not a pedophile fan either, but they're really pushing the criminal justice and how she's soft on crime. I don't really have a problem with that.
I will say, about the whole, I totally forgot Justin's question when I was talking, so I just was rambling about the whole way that the Republicans are going after it. I do think, on one hand, yeah, they're grandstanding with we're not going to do the Kavanaugh thing, and then you're doing a pussy version of the Kavanaugh thing by going after culture war issues. However, I do say to people who say that that's all in bad faith and they're trying to be gotcha questions, I actually think some of those questions are important, particularly for me as a woman. And I'm not saying I'm a transgender woman. I'm saying as a woman, I hate when people use that qualifier. As a woman, it does bother me that she would not answer that question straightforward. I understand why she wouldn't, but it bothers me because I see.
What do you think the reason is she didn't answer it then?
Yeah,
because I think she wanted
justification for that.
Because I would say that recently, and this is why I think it was an important question in general, because recently what's been happening is when you put gender identity as a protected class with sex, those are starting to come to a head. Basically saying that you can't discriminate against someone for their gender identity allows you to not protect people by their sex if it's, generally women. It allows you to put males, biological males, into prisons with women, females, and not be protected them by their sex, which is also a protected class. And it's a clash. And I think if I'm going to be the most charitable to her as possible, I think maybe she was trying to make it so that she wouldn't be, recused from having to participate in such cases in the future. If she said adult human female, which is the answer I would have given, because there's a bunch of people out there, science, doctors, professionals of all sorts who will say a woman is anyone who identifies as a woman. Sex is a spectrum. It's all tautological. This whole woman is anyone who identifies as such. I can understand maybe why she wouldn't get into that. I would maybe say, if I was her, adult human female, plus there are transgender women, and we can get into whether we need that qualifier, transgender, before woman or not, but there are them, and they identify as women. So I will say that could be under the definition, but that's all I'm going to say. That's probably what I would have done. Although if I had, really big balls, I would have just said adult human female, because that is.
And then you wouldn't have said you're a woman.
That's right. You would be a trans woman if you had really big balls.
So
I was going to say, I am an adult human female, everybody. I know I have strong features, but I am not a transgender woman, although they're great.
Well, I never suspected that. I don't.
I've been accused of it so many times.
Wow.
I also like to wear a lot of makeup and stuff.
Right. I think she did it simply so she could not be not canceled, but come after on it. Because one, she's got to know that there's a definition of woman, which actually says like adult female. And then you go to the definition of female and it's, reproductive organs, So, and she has to do this on the bench. She's got to make decisions for Title IX, for discrimination cases. So this is, to me, it was very, and it was, like you said, it was a great question. It was very important because it came to me now, the realization that of how I think lame she is. And I'm totally fine, especially after seeing Sotomayor with the vaccine, mandate stuff, just shit her pants on the court and during those hearings. I don't care calling these people what they are. This lady is qualified, perfectly fine. If you can't say what a definition, take judicial notice of a definition that everyone knows and that's out there, what are you going to do when you're on the court? And her ability to not say this, I guess, and the ability, but her refusal to also says a little bit about what you're going to probably get from her on the court, I think.
And you have to remember too that she's going to have clerks who are writing a good portion of her opinions,
right.
And the clerks are going to be younger and more activisty. So it would be it lets me believe that she may be vulnerable to stuff like that in her opinions and letting some of this stuff take a hold. And I do know because of some of the nature of my work, I think Tyler does the same thing as I do. I've had minimal, but some cases involving the issue of transgender children, particularly in California. However, there's an ongoing lawsuit that's recently been filed by the organization Women's Liberation Front. They go by WOLF, WOLF, specifically about the transgender women, biological males in women's prisons. I could definitely see this going up the federal, all the way up to the Supreme Court at some point. And I think it's a very important issue on the sex scale of things, not gender identity. That it's, the fact that these two things are going to come together and people will think that gender identity rules out is very aggravating, considering one is a material reality and one is not. And, we should have compassion for these people, obviously. But when you're putting the most vulnerable women in society, women in prisons, there's myriad of studies on this. They're usually abused, addicts, usually not in for violent crimes, and you're putting them with biological males. I believe the study recently of the federal transgender inmate population said that 50% were in for sex crimes of some nature. I don't love that. And I think that's a reasonable take. And I would love to have a woman, especially a Black woman, because you know what? Black women, I'm going to say something stereotypical. I've been in front of a lot of Black women judges. They don't take no shit. And I like that about them. And I would love to see her take no shit. There's one that used to be on the Ninth Circuit out here who was great. I met her when I was in law school and I was like, oh, and she wore like a pink suit under her robes. And I was like, yeah, you're cool. I've never done such a thing, but I wish I would. But yeah, I'm a little disappointed, especially because she actually does have some protections on her side. The left wokey types aren't going to go after a Black woman as hard on the trans issue because they're going to, go, well, the intersections of race and, you have to think about what the Black community, blah, blah, blah. She could have had a little bit more protection than, say, well, Amy Coney Barrett's not lefty, so people expect her to say that shit. But, if Amy Coney Barrett was a lefty, they should probably get attacked more.
So let me just say something really controversial here, which is the only thing that noticing her and listening to her talk and talk about her history and her education and rulings and all this stuff. The only thing that she seems to represent the Black community with is her first name. That's it.
See, I had looked at her record
No lie.
and some what was it? It was between her and who was the other potential? I can't remember her name now. Anyway, the other potential candidate was more controversial, and she was a little bit more vanilla as far as a leftist judge goes between the two. And so, like when I was looking at it, I was like, okay, this is the Black female version of Stephen Breyer. Like it's not like they're doing anything particularly huge to change the court. And even if she was like psychotically radically woke leftist, it's still 5'4" and 6'3" if you count Roberts. I don't count Roberts as a conservative judge. He is exclusively a conservative judge on the rulings that don't actually fucking matter. So
did she clerk for Breyer? I think she clerked for him.
Yeah.
So like
I actually love though I'm so sorry to interrupt.
No, I was just saying whenever I looked at her record, I just thought, okay, this is like Black female Breyer. I don't see that this changes things particularly. But then they've started this hearing, and some of her answers have really made me think, God, why? Like just give a straight answer and don't be an idiot. I don't understand. And it's not like they've. And in my opinion, you are both of more the legal minds and know that world better. But just from like a layman's standpoint, like it doesn't feel like they've asked her exceptionally hard questions. I haven't thought that anything about these hearings or whatever you want to call them has been really very aggressive or anything of that nature. How have y'all felt about what you've seen of it so far?
Well, I'll say so. They've asked her so Ted Cruz went through a few things and he was trying to do some gotcha stuff. And I get it, not being able to define a woman as an example, and then kind of stumbling over yourself and about CRT that's taught in her children's school. And then they're saying, oh, I thought you were talking about public schools. It's just kind of disingenuous. I feel a little bit on her part. But, they did get to some things about how, she said she's a little bit more of the originalist type. She went through her methodology. She did then talk about kind of settled versus precedent, which I have a big problem with. She did talk about like her abortion, that it's, Roe v. Wade, it's settled law. We don't touch that anymore, yet other things aren't. And I'm not a real big fan of, you saying you can't necessarily overturn something. But yeah, for the most part, and once again, this goes back to the Bork, where they don't want to talk about a case that might come up, a controversy or an issue. They don't wade into something. Mike Lee asked her about her feelings of court packing, because he's like, this is never going to come before the Supreme Court. And what's your opinion there? And I don't know if it's just the way that they're, kind of the political sense of before in a confirmation, just not wanting to talk about these things. She just refused to answer it, or I don't know, this I don't really have an opinion type of thing. Well, that's kind of bull crap. And so I'm disappointed that she didn't weigh in that. And they've tried a few of those things, but you can't really say, hey, this case, how would be your ruling other than her sentencing? And I think she actually did fine on those things.
Yeah, I was just going to say earlier, I love what Tyler said about the lack of diversity. They are all, it's like, Ivy League to a federal district judge to a Supreme Court clerk. I mean, there's no diversity of record with these people, as far as I recall off the top of my head. I could be wrong about that. And I personally have worked with lawyers from the Ivy League. I'm not impressed. Never have been. I went to school back in Philadelphia when I lived there with kids who were all Ivy League legacies. None of them were smart. They were all getting in on sports scholarships and their names. I'm not saying that smart people don't go there and that they're not great schools, especially like the law school. I'm just saying, I love to see, some more diversity of background overall in the picks. I actually am interested, Tyler, in the past confirmations that you've seen, because again, I had barely seen any. Or do they usually ask about specific cases that they've tried in the past?
Yeah. So they did bring up a few of those yesterday, and she's like, I don't know. And then you can submit your answer to them at a later date. She did mention that she's not real adept at con law, constitutional law, which is okay.
Isn't that kind of the point of being on
Yeah.
the Supreme Court? Like that should be the entirety of your Supreme Court qualifications, is how good are you
Yeah.
with the Constitution? Because isn't
But
like
you
that,
do
that
have
should
time
be the
to.
primary job of the Supreme Court, is to rule on constitutionality of state laws that are being passed and then appealed and bumped up to them. Like,
well, Meredith could probably speak in this too. I mean, like I do family law, and I think Meredith is doing that mostly as well. You end up getting so in that field. So if she did public defender as an example, she's not really doing. I mean, there's constitutional law in there, but you're not going over that. So all these rulings that go up to the Supreme Court, I could have one from an issue that I have in my family law, and yes, there's basis in the Constitution, but there's statutes and all these, because your state Supreme Court. Anyway, there's all these other things. So the Supreme Court will handle everything they can. So I get it. But I mean, Meredith, yeah.
I'm just surprised that she would give that answer.
Right.
But I do agree with Tyler. I mean, like, it's been a very long time since con law was one of my favorite classes in life. I can't remember anything off the top of my head. I can't. I remember Miranda. That's so hard to remember. You know what I'm saying? Like, you do in law. And the biggest part about practicing law and law school in general, but more so practicing law, is learning a way of thinking and reviewing things and interpreting them. So there are times where in my area of work where something comes into me and there is a crossover with a civil issue. I've never practiced civil litigation in my life. However, from my experience, knowing how to read statutes and do this, that, the other thing, and use LexisNexis to research cases, I've been able to figure it out and do very well in those cases. So I want to be tripped out by her not saying she's like not super familiar with con law. I'm just surprised she would admit to that and not have like boned up on it before the hearing, I guess.
Maybe I should reiterate. I read that because she just had a confirmation hearing, I think like last year or recently for it was anyway for one of the, I think the appellate court or something, and she had claimed then that she had little experience with it. So it doesn't mean that she doesn't really know it. She's just hasn't had much experience. But in the same regard, I don't think any of those other judges on there have ever been a public defender. So
that's probably the thing I like about her the most, is that she's a public defender. I'm sick of having prosecutors and corporate lawyers on the bench.
They're still paid by the state.
Sure. Yeah. So I guess kind of my beef with the lack of constitutional law experience is like all of my experience in the court is from the other side of it, not from being a lawyer, but from having to go to court because of random bullshit, and I guess to some extent the lawyering side of it, because I've represented myself in all of the family court stuff and also with all of my various run-ins with the law over the last several years. And Indiana state constitution is and has been my saving grace on a lot of that stuff, because so I took kind of a similar route to libertarianism that Eric of Rebel with a Cause has kind of taken. Like, you go from being a GOP Republican to the Constitution Party to libertarianism. And so when I was kind of a Constitution Party guy, I spent a lot of time studying both the U.S. Constitution and the Indiana State Constitution. I was planning to run for a local office at the time, and I felt like if you're going to run as a Constitution Party guy, you should probably be intimately familiar with your own Constitution. So I put a lot of time into that, and that served me well, because there are a lot of things in the state and federal constitutions that do offer certain protections and allowances when you are defending yourself either against like for me, it was going through multiple appeals processes, trying to get child support and other stuff with my original divorce overturned and modified and yada yada yada, which is still not entirely a great situation, but it's a lot better than it was 4 years ago. And just because I understood the way the Indiana state constitution works and was able to utilize certain aspects of that to make sure that I was getting the proper allowances that were kind of being ignored previously. And then also in dealing with, I've had some run-ins with speeding tickets and license suspension, and then license still being suspended, and the license still being suspended, and all kinds of. I went for 3 years without a valid driver's license because the state kept jerking me around and not telling me all the things that I was supposed to do to get my license fixed and validated. Somehow that didn't prevent me from being able to drive. Apparently, a driver's license doesn't actually determine whether or not you're a good driver. But anyway,
they gave me a license. I'm a terrible driver.
Well, you're a woman, so that makes sense.
I know, and I passed on the first try. It was easy. I actually think I'm a great driver,
but so I've
passengers
for a woman.
For a woman, yeah. But so I've had a lot of experience with going through the court system, and being intimately familiar with the Constitution has been extremely helpful for me. So to hear something like that from a judge, it kind of comes across a bit disheartening. But like I said, like there's for what she does, there's probably a lot more to it than like my very specific instances. I could utilize that knowledge to my benefit.
And well, like Meredith said too, though, you're going to be up there. You're going to have your clerks, the brilliant minds behind you that are, not just some no name. Well, they're no name, but some loser law student. But these are smart people, and they're going to be doing all the research for you. They're going to spoon feed a lot of things for you, and so she'll be fine. It doesn't matter if you are really vested in con law; you can still make ridiculous decisions, which we see all the time. Now, did you want free advice? Is that what you're really asking for, Justin? I'm sorry.
I know. I'm sitting here hearing about child support. I'm getting triggered.
Right.
No, I pretty thoroughly took care of that.
Good stuff.
I had somebody that gave me a little bit of advice, and he was like,
"It's always surprising."
He said, "You're a smart dude. This is what I'm going to tell you. You do with it what you want." And I came away with basically everything I wanted, and my ex left the courtroom crying. So that was pretty fun and entertaining for me.
Nice.
It's always surprising when I read like family law cases from other jurisdictions, either like, just shitting around or like because I've gotten a client from out of state, and just seeing the way the family law system is run in other states is like, it's wild. It's wild.
Well, did you remember that case probably a year ago now? I think it was Indiana, the judge that took the mom's kids away because she wasn't vaccinated.
It was Illinois.
Illinois. Okay.
Yeah, that wasn't Indiana.
No, sorry. It started with
an
I.
Indiana.
I believe that was overturned.
Indiana is a red enough state. If a judge had tried to do that, the entire state legislature would have had them removed from the.
It was overturned, but at the time, I'm just like, holy shit.
I'm really concerned, and I've had questions about vaccines come up from several clients. I've yet to take one to court, and I'm happy that now it seems like the mask is dropped on the vaccines enough. But it was I was really concerned about that, taking those cases to court, because the bias for vaccines in general, especially in California, is strong. And this vaccine, it triggers something in the libs that I've never seen before. And I was very, very concerned about that. But I actually think it's going to be okay for now. But yeah, Tyler, you're so right. That was a crazy case. Luckily, it was overturned. But yeah, we're going to be seeing a lot more cases like that with some parenting decisions. Especially, again, I hate to bring it up because it sucks all the air out of the room. But the transgender issue it's really causing a problem for a lot of families, and we're going to see a lot of those cases.
I hate to disturb your white pill there, but I just heard on the radio this morning, the California legislature is trying to pass a bunch of laws, even though COVID's like, what? Who? About mandating all every employee be vaccinated, 0 to death. So, while this has always been my fear, I felt like the federal government didn't have the police power, even though Sotomayor said they did, to enact these kind of things through, like what Biden was trying to do. The states do. So, it could come to a state near you. My wife this morning, she hears this on the radio and she's like, we got to move. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So sorry to tell you that. But.
No, you're right. There is a bill that I actually was looking at when I was advising a client a few weeks ago that said they're actually making, so they have already made the standard vaccinations, the MMR, et cetera, required for even private schools. And they're making the new proposed bill that I think would take effect as of January 1, 23 would be that private school, every school vaccine requirement, you don't get to say no, or you lose your accreditation or whatever.
Right.
I haven't fully looked into it because from what I recall, there was a bunch of crazy stuff in there where I was like, oh, this isn't even going to get passed in crazy ass California. But
right.
Yeah.
Hopefully. Yeah.
So Tyler had mentioned Roe v. Wade. Do you think that will ever come to the Supreme Court? I know there's this Mississippi abortion ban after 15 weeks, I think it was, and then there's the Texas after 6 weeks. And I may have those flipped, but anyway, there's the Texas and the Mississippi abortion bills that both got passed, and they are both coming to the Supreme Court for appeals sometime in the next few months. Is the Supreme Court going to actually take up Roe v. Wade with the potential for overturning it? So for my personal opinion, I've never thought that they would. I think they will always punt that back to the states. I just don't think that there's a political will to piss people off that much from the Supreme Court. But it's a different Supreme Court right now, potentially. Do you think there's a potential that they will take that case up at any point in, say, the next 4 to 5 years?
You want to take it? I have an answer.
Yeah. Well, you have probably the more succinct answer, so you go.
No, that's not true. I say no, and because they are a political animal. You've seen certain cases they just refuse to take unless the court was like a 7-2. I just don't see that happening. There's some cases they do not want a split decision on. That's going to be one, even though the reality is it's like that don't say gay ban, law thing in Florida, which is people just miss. It's all just wrong. Roe v. Wade being repealed would not be devastating. It'd just be up to the states. And, you live in a state, California, you think there's going to be any problems there? No. So that's my opinion. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, my opinion was sort of the same conclusion, but not for the same reason. It's just that I don't think the way that they have to look at things like standing and the actual issue that's coming before the court, it doesn't seem like any case has gotten yet to the point where it's appropriate to bring in front of the Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court wouldn't say this isn't for us to look at based on who's bringing it and what the issues are. Yeah,
good point. The babies it's hard for them to have standing when they're dead. I'm just kidding.
Right. No, but for real. Although, there is stuff in that Texas bill. Was it actually taken out? Was the stuff about letting a random citizen dime you out and they can get $10,000 from you? Was that actually taken out?
I did not follow that one enough, so I'll recuse myself.
Yeah,
you're talking about the bounty hunter, the bounty hunter aspect of the Texas one,
right? Yeah, look, however you feel about abortion is what it is. That's a crazy thing to allow.
I looked at that. So around the time that was happening, there was also the Mississippi abortion bill that was going through, and I was looking a lot more closely at the Mississippi bill, just because it was being played up as incredibly racist, as well as being a threat to Roe v. Wade. So I was looking at that one more specifically, and then I happened to see the stuff that was coming up about I I actually did 1 or 2 episodes where I just dedicated it to going through the Mississippi abortion bill and kind of looking at it.
That's probably the one that's 6 weeks. Then.
I think the Mississippi one is 14 weeks, and the Texas one, or 15 weeks, and Texas was the 6 weeks. But anyway, or 10 weeks, or so anyway. Regardless,
I'm just trying to figure out the racial angle. I could see if you said for 6 weeks, like a lot of people don't know they're pregnant by 6 weeks, and especially more poor people, fat people might not know they're pregnant by 6 weeks.
So the reason that the Mississippi abortion bill is racist is because Black women in Mississippi are more likely to have children without baby daddies providing any support. And so by not being allowed to abort these babies, that is putting them in a difficult position. Like, that's why it's racist. It is the most okay, like, I get it statistically. I get the statistics on that. It's the most ridiculous fucking argument you could possibly make. Like, quit fucking around like that. Like, I don't what there's easier solutions than to just allow you to murder babies at will. Like, that's I don't know, maybe the state of Mississippi should stop supplementing that, because like that's I lived down there for several years. Like, that's a pretty big cash cow in and of itself, is churning babies out at the right intervals so that you maintain all of your benefits. And yeah, like,
we call them breeders in our line of work.
It's a fucking game that they play very well. Like, maybe quit, incentivizing that, and then you don't have that as much. Like the studs or the bulls, like in those communities, like if you look into that, like, that's fucking insane. But we won't go down that rabbit hole.
I just want to say that I'm not calling Black women who do that breeders. Everyone that I've encountered in my line of work has been a trashy white chick. I'm just saying that in family law, we say, like, oh, she gets her money. Like, when you have a woman who's had with a billion baby daddies, you're like, oh, this is how she gets her money.
But I think that the statistics that Justin's referencing there is that then the Black moms just don't take them to term, right? They're aborting them. And actually, if you, without being too joking on this, if you look at the statistics in New York, it's quite disturbing for African Americans. What's interesting, kind of to bring this in full circle, is so she was Miss Brown was being selected due to her race and her gender. It feels like you're going up to maybe Meredith. I'm just a white guy. Maybe as a woman, define that as her. How would you feel being selected because of those attributes? She seems to be taking that like it's perfectly fine with her. But it almost is weird, the reaction on the left here too, which is the bigotry. I guess Bush had said this. It went bigotry of low expectations, which is, oh, she's a Black lady who not only graduated, but now she's a judge. It's just so amazing that you would make this happen. And I'm like, well, why do you expect things to happen like this rather than to make it like some retard actually made it to first grade? I'm not saying she is, but you don't expect anyway. So I'm gonna fumble all over myself.
You're 100% right. As a woman who has competed against males in my life and has brothers and grew up like playing with the boys, it would bother me tremendously. However, there is a school of thought within feminism, probably within people who are into studying race theory as well, where it says these people were there and qualified the whole time, but without the mandate to consider them, they wouldn't be considered. So whatever. I don't see anything wrong with her qualifications. She looks like every, as we discussed, she looks like every qualified justice who's come before her. It would bother me. That's all I can say. It would bother me, but I'm not a Black woman, so maybe that's different.
And is this necessarily some huge leap forward? Like, statistically, Black females have the highest level of, or have that like a higher percentage of college education than like any other demographic in the country. So, Black females are statistically the most educated.
You get a degree, and you get a degree, and you get right. The Oprah.
For whatever it's worth, yes, that is kind of what has been happening over the last 15 to 20 years.
It's interesting that Clarence Thomas has been on the Supreme Court for a long time, and he is a conservative Black justice. That's pretty diverse.
Right.
You know, it's pretty diverse. It's pretty diverse to get Clarence Thomas, and Clarence Thomas is a brilliant legal mind. I hate when people say he's no Scalia, who, by the way, writes his own opinions, and they're hilarious. I've like laughed out loud reading them before, but R.I.P. But Clarence Thomas is a brilliant legal mind, and many people in the Black community will say, you know, this, that, the other thing, but there's many people in the Black community who love having him on the Supreme Court, regardless of their personal politics. So, you know, I love that he doesn't get the same praise just because he's not lib, whatever.
Well, he's married to a white woman. That's part of the problem.
He is. But I actually didn't know till today that he was married to a white woman.
He,
Really?
what I've, you know, back in law school when you're reading all these, you know, decisions, especially common law stuff, I always found Clarence Thomas to be the most consistent. You always knew pretty much where he's going to line up. And, you know, anytime you go before a judge, I mean, this may be a problem that I have with Ms. Brown here, or Jackson Brown, is you're concerned about consistency. You know, if you know what's happening and you're always going to get the same kind of, you know, people can predict. But me personally, when I'm before a judge, you like to know and prepare your clients of what's going to happen. I don't know if that's as big a deal with the Supreme Court, but I don't know.
I mean, I would think if you are presenting a case to the Supreme Court, you kind of want to know where you stand with the judges as you go in. Like if it's somebody that's, if you have so the problem that I ran into in all of my divorce proceeding stuff was the original judge was fucking senile. And we found that out after the fact when I started looking through all of the appeals and everything and reading his opinion and the reasoning behind his ruling on some stuff. The dude was clearly fucking senile. Like what was being said was not what he was hearing. So it completely fucked everything up. Like when you've got somebody that is interpreting a case in a way that's not the way the case is being presented, then, you know, that could fuck you up. So yeah, if you've got Clarence Thomas, who you know is consistent, if you've got Gorsuch, who you know is going to be consistent, if you know that Amy Coney Barrett is gonna you know, swing this way, you know, Sotomayor is going to look at it from a very specific perspective, and then you got Roberts and you got Kavanaugh, and you don't know which way. Like Roberts is going to go whichever way the social winds are blowing, and Kavanaugh is a fucking wild card as far as I'm concerned at this point. So, like, yeah, I think having some consistency in the court is something that would be considered important. At least, I mean, you know, from a layman's view of it. Like, yeah, if I know I have to go before a judge, I would kind of like to know that this judge isn't gonna just change his opinion based on whatever he feels like today. Like he's going to be principled in some manner, whether I agree with the manner that he holds his principles or not. At least I can have an idea of how I should present my case. You know, so I do think there is some credibility to being consistent.
Yeah. Respect.
Tyler's totally right about Clarence Thomas. I think he's probably the only one that you could predict 100% of the time where he falls on it. And it's not, I hate when people say like it's a political issue. It's an interpretation issue. Right. And that's why because Scalia even went wild on a couple cases that were surprising. And to her credit, RBG was not consistent. I mean that in a positive way as to that she made some surprising decisions. And I could see Miss Brown Jackson, I don't know which one she likes to go by, having almost a similar thing to RBG because she seems to have kind of a bunch of dichotomous factors in her background that are kind of interesting. So I could see her being somewhat of a wild card herself. Again, I think Tyler said it earlier, or you said it, Justin. Gorsuch has been really awesome. I really enjoyed everything that he's done. I don't know why I started on this. But yeah, Clarence Thomas.
And I think it's KBJ. So BJ. That's how I'm going to remember it.
KBJ. Oh my God, I just remembered what Adam called her last night. That was funny.
Well, actually, it was Andy. But yeah.
Totally handy.
Either way, it was hilarious.
Adam Nutter, you're short.
Oh shit. He was really working that one out,
It's
but we won't get into that
complex,
right
oh my
now.
goodness. It was funny.
All right, got any other legal opinions on anything while we're at it? Anything else that might come before this new iteration of the Supreme Court here in the next few years that you might have concerns over? I don't think they'll ever take up anything that's actually Second Amendment related, or at least nothing that is of valid importance. They will punt that every single time. They've shown that. I think they've shown that throughout our entire lifetimes, that if it pertains to the Second Amendment, they will punt it. They, regardless of how the court is aligned, they are not going to take it. So anything else that y'all can think of that might be a swing topic or a sticking topic that would come up with this Supreme Court going forward? Something we should be watching out for?
I think there's probably going to be some residual immigration stuff going on for the next few years. Be interesting to see if COVID's, once COVID stuff gets there. I don't know. Tyler, what do you think?
Yeah, well, you mentioned no Second Amendments, but Heller was a recent decision. DCV Heller, I think, is what it is, which was kind of a big. I mean, you can look at it and you go, "Oh, it wasn't big enough," but it kind of took away that whole militia, personal defense. So I think there's some help there. Are they going to take up any more of those? Probably not. They actually, you look over the last 10 or so years, the First Amendment stuff has actually been somewhat solidified, which has been good to see. Things coming on, you never know what's going to be coming up. I would like to see them take on some of the administration stuff. I know Gorsuch is really the Chevron deference type of stuff. He's really kind of been against that. And I think it would be nice to shave that away. And some of these Fourth Amendment problems of, what do they call it? We to take their money. It's civil asset forfeiture. It'd be nice. I think that's getting a groundswell, and it'd be nice to see a good case come for that.
Yeah, that would be great. That's a huge issue.
Very cool. Well, I've got family members showing up, so I appreciate y'all coming on. This was really good. I appreciate getting some actual professional opinions on this stuff and talk about some of the stuff from perspectives that I normally wouldn't think about. I try to be relatively well researched whenever I talk about this stuff, but I'm not in it every day. It's not my field. So there's a lot of stuff that I straight up don't understand. And I wouldn't even know where to start with looking at it. So y'all brought a perspective that helps to kind of round it out and help me to understand what's going on with some of the questioning and some of the stuff that we're looking at here. So I really appreciate it. Y'all give your plugs and everything, and let's get out of here.
Go ahead, Meredith.
I have no plugs.
Well, I'll plug. Tyler, Libertarian Podcast Review is really my only outward thing, but I'm an attorney in California. If someone's out there and they not looking to do anything, but if some people, they've reached out to me, and I Meredith as well. So, some of it's just, if we can give you a little help in the family law. I'm not looking to take your case, but if you're, kind of in a desperate situation, I can kind of help you out there. Or, I'm also involved in the LP Mises Caucus in California. So
yes, me too.
We'll be out there as well. So
yes, I'm also in the LP of Contra Costa County on the executive committee, which I got into by force.
Nice.
But yeah. Not by force, it was, whatever. But hit me up on the Twitter. That's my @ right there. Can you see me pointing? There. And I can help, but I can't solicit you as a client, so.
I'm not doing that either. Thanks, Justin.
Yeah, thank y'all very much. This has been a lot of fun. Hopefully people learned a little bit. Y'all have a good one, and I will see everybody on Wednesday.